I had one chance to decide: let a man die or destroy my own life trying to save him. The note in my apron pocket burned like a live wire, 7 words that would either get me killed or pull me into a world I'd spent my whole life avoiding. 40 seconds until his wife's hired guns turned this restaurant into a massacre. Linda's fingers closed around the folded receipt as she approached table 12. The dining room sparkled with old money crystal chandeliers, silk napkins, the kind of people who didn't notice the help. Kyung Won sat perfectly still in his tailored suit, a man built of controlled power and calculated silence. Across from him, his wife laughed, touching his hand with manicured fingers, her wedding ring catching the light. She looked devoted. She wasn't. 15 minutes ago, Linda had heard her in the stockroom, voice cold as she confirmed positions. Bar. Kitchen entrance. Emergency exit. When he stands to leave. Linda placed the receipt face down beside his water glass. 30 seconds. Welcome back, family. I've missed you so much. Your presence here fills my heart. Subscribe to stay close. This story is one I can't wait to share with you. Comment where you're from so I feel you near. Let's begin. Linda's heart slammed against her ribs as she set down the water pitcher and stepped back from table 12. Her legs felt disconnected from her body, like she was watching herself from somewhere outside her own skin. Kyung Won didn't move. His hand rested on the table, fingers spread across the white linen, the receipt directly beneath his palm. For 3 seconds that stretched into eternity, he didn't even blink. Then his eyes shifted not to the note, but to Linda's face. The look lasted less than a heartbeat, but it was enough. He'd seen her fear. His wife was still talking. Something about the charity gala next week, her voice smooth as expensive wine. Linda forced herself to turn away, to walk back toward the kitchen like nothing had happened. Her shoes clicked against the marble floor. 28 steps, she counted every one. Behind her, she heard Kyung Won's voice cut through his wife's story. "We're leaving." Linda's hand froze on the kitchen door. She turned her head just enough to see table 12 inches her peripheral vision. His wife blinked, smile faltering. "What, darling, we haven't even—" Now. Kyung Won was already standing, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced efficiency. Something came up. Work. The word landed like a stone in still water. His wife's face did something complicated, confusion, then frustration, then something that smoothed out too quickly into concern. Linda had waitressed long enough to read people. That last expression was practiced, rehearsed. "But we just ordered," his wife said, reaching for his hand. Her fingers brushed his wrist. "Can't it wait 30 minutes? There. Linda saw it. The tightness around her eyes, the way her other hand gripped her purse. She wasn't disappointed. She was calculating. Kyung Won picked up the receipt. Linda's stomach dropped. He unfolded it slowly, his face utterly blank as he read the 7 words she'd scrawled in desperate shorthand. "They're waiting. Your wife betrayed you." His eyes lifted to his wife's face. 30 minutes, he repeated, voice flat. "That's oddly specific." "I just meant—" His wife's laugh was wind chimes, delicate and hollow. "I just meant we should enjoy our evening. You've been so stressed." Kyung Won slipped the receipt into his jacket pocket. Linda saw his gaze sweep the restaurant with new purpose. The bar, where a man in a leather jacket sat nursing a vodka he hadn't touched in 20 minutes. The hallway leading to the kitchen, where one of the line cooks had been replaced by someone she'd never seen before. The emergency exit, where a server she didn't recognize was adjusting the thermostat. Too many strangers. Too many eyes tracking. Table 12. "You're right," Kyung Won said, settling back into his chair with unnerving calm. "I am stressed." He reached across the table and took his wife's hand, thumbs stroking across her knuckles. "Tell me about the gala. Who's on the guest list?" His wife exhaled, tension bleeding from her shoulders. "Oh, the usual crowd. The Volkovs, the Chens. Your brother said he might—" "My brother?" Kyung Won's smile didn't reach his eyes. "When did you talk to Juno?" The question landed soft as a knife between ribs. "This morning. He called about the seating arrangements." Her hand twitched in his grip. Why? Just curious. Kyung Won lifted his wineglass with his free hand, still holding hers captive with the other. We should make a toast. To family. Linda watched from the kitchen doorway as his wife raised her glass, diamonds glittering on her wrist. The man at the bar shifted his weight. The fake line cook's hand disappeared into his apron. Kyung Won's eyes met Linda's across the restaurant floor. Then every light in the building went out. The darkness lasted 2 seconds before the emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in sick red. Linda's brain screamed at her to drop, to run, to do anything except stand frozen in the kitchen doorway like a deer on the highway. The first gunshot cracked through the air like breaking bone. Table 12 exploded. Kyung Won had flipped it on its side in one violent motion, wine and shattered glass spraying across marble. His wife screamed, but it sounded wrong, more fury than fear. Linda saw her scrambling backward in her heels, expensive dress hiked up as she dove behind a column. "Get down!" someone shouted, but Linda couldn't tell who. The restaurant erupted into chaos. Chairs scraped, people screamed. A woman in pearls hit the floor so hard, Linda heard the impact. Another shot. The mirror behind the bar shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. The man in the leather jacket was standing now, gun raised, aiming through the red-lit darkness at the overturned table. Linda's body finally remembered how to move. She dropped into a crouch, hands covering her head like that would stop bullets. Stupid, so stupid. She should have stayed out of it. Should have kept her mouth shut and let whatever was going to happen just happen. "Kitchen, move." The voice was right beside her. Linda looked up and Kyung Won was there, blood streaking down his temple, suit jacket torn at the shoulder. He grabbed her wrist and yanked her through the kitchen door so hard she nearly fell. "Wait, Shut up and run." He shoved her forward into the controlled chaos of the kitchen. Steam billowed from abandoned pots. Someone had dropped an entire tray of plates. The head chef was yelling into his phone, pressed flat against the walk-in freezer. Kyung Won moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently. He grabbed a prep knife off the counter without breaking stride, keeping Linda's wrist locked in his other hand. She stumbled after him, her work shoes sliding on the greasy tile. Behind them, the kitchen door burst open. The fake line cook, the one she'd noticed earlier, came through with a gun already raised. Kyung Won pivoted, putting himself between Linda and the shooter. The movement was instinctive, practiced. The shot went wide, hitting the industrial stove. Kyung Won threw the knife. It wasn't some action movie precision throw. It tumbled awkwardly through the air, but it made the shooter flinch, duck. That second was enough. Kyung Won grabbed a pot of boiling water off the stove and hurled it. The screaming that followed made Linda's stomach turn. "Out, now!" Kyung Won was pulling her again, toward the back exit. Linda's mind was white noise and adrenaline. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. She served food for a living. She had student loans and a sister in college and a shift that ended at 11. They hit the back door at full speed. The alarm shrieked as they burst into the alley. Chicago winter slammed into Linda like a physical thing, wind and ice and air so cold it burned her lungs. She wasn't wearing a coat, just her uniform, black pants and a white shirt already soaked with wine and someone else's blood. Kyung Won spun her around, slamming her back against the brick wall beside the dumpster. His hand came up, fingers gripping her jaw, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were black in the dim light, utterly focused, utterly terrifying. "The stockroom," he said, voice deadly calm despite the chaos they'd just escaped. "What exactly did you hear?" Linda opened her mouth to answer. The back door exploded outward off its hinges. The door didn't just open, it came off the frame completely, metal hinges shrieking as 2 men shouldered through. Both had guns. Both were already aiming. Kyung Won moved before Linda's brain could process the threat. He grabbed her by the back of her shirt and threw her sideways behind the dumpster. She hit the ground hard, palms scraping against frozen asphalt, just as the first shots tore through the space where she'd been standing. The brick wall behind them exploded into dust and fragments. Linda's ears were ringing. Everything sounded underwater, muffled and distant. She looked up and Kyung Won was already on the first gunman, moving with surgical precision. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it at an angle that made something crack, and drove his elbow into the guy's throat. The gun clattered to the ground. The second gunman swung his weapon toward Kyung Won. Linda's body moved on pure instinct. She grabbed the fallen gun with shaking hands, but before she could even figure out which end was which, Kyung Won had kicked it out of her grip. "Don't," his voice was sharp, "you'll shoot yourself." Instead, he grabbed a metal trash can lid and swung it like a shield, deflecting the second gunman's aim just as he fired. The shot went wide, sparking off the dumpster. Kyung Won closed the distance in 2 strides and brought the lid down on the man's head with a sound like a church bell. The gunman dropped. Linda was hyperventilating, she realized. Short, gasping breaths that weren't giving her enough oxygen. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd lived in Chicago her whole life, and the worst violence she'd ever seen was a fistfight outside a bar. "Can you run?" Kyung Won was already pulling her to her feet, checking the alley both directions. I can't." "Can you run?" Not a question this time. Linda nodded because what else could she do? They ran. The alley opened onto a side street. Rain had started falling, cold and mean, turning everything slick and black. Linda's shoes had no traction. She slipped twice in the first 10 seconds, and both times Kyung Won caught her without slowing down. A car engine roared behind them. Headlights flooded the street, turning the rain into static. "Left!" Kyung Won yanked her into a narrower alley between 2 buildings. The car couldn't follow, but Linda heard doors opening, footsteps hitting pavement. They were still coming. Her lungs were burning. Her legs felt like concrete. She waitress doubles all the time, but this was different. This was running for her life, and her body was screaming that it wasn't built for this. They burst out onto a main street. Traffic. People. A bus hissing to a stop at the corner. Kyung Won pulled her toward it, but Linda saw movement in her peripheral vision. The man from the bar, the one who'd started shooting first, rounding the corner with his gun still in his hand. He was 20 feet away. 15. Close enough that Linda could see his face, see the cold calculation in his eyes as he raised the weapon. Kyung Won saw him too. He pushed Linda toward the bus, putting himself between her and the shooter again. But Linda was done being helpless. She grabbed the only thing within reach, a steel coffee thermos someone had left on a newspaper stand, and threw it as hard as she could. Her aim was terrible. It hit the gunman in the shoulder instead of the head, but it was enough to make him flinch, enough to buy 2 seconds. Kyung Won was already moving. He crossed the distance like a predator, caught the man's gun hand, and drove him backward into a storefront window. The glass shattered. The gun fell. The man didn't get up. Kyung Won turned back to Linda, breathing hard, blood on his knuckles. For the first time since this started, something like approval flickered across his face. The bus. Now? They climbed on just as the doors wheezed shut. The driver barely glanced at them, just another late-night couple in a city full of chaos. Linda collapsed into a seat, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Kyung Won sat beside her, scanning every face, every window, every reflection. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his jaw tightened. "We're not going to the police," he said quietly. Linda stared at him. "What?" "They'll kill your sister first." He turned the phone toward her. On the screen was a photo of a college campus, a girl with Linda's eyes and a backpack, walking to class. The photo had been taken today. The apartment was nothing like Linda expected. No gold fixtures or marble columns. Just concrete, steel, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a Chicago skyline that looked too far away to be real. The space felt more like a bunker than a home. Everything was clean lines and hard edges, the kind of place where you could wipe away blood and no one would ever know. Kyung Won locked 3 separate deadbolts behind them. Linda stood dripping on the hardwood floor, still shaking, her uniform soaked through with rain and sweat and fear. She kept seeing that photo. Her sister Maya, walking across campus, completely unaware that someone had been close enough to count her freckles. "Sit." Kyung Won gestured to the leather couch. It wasn't a suggestion. Linda's legs gave out. She sat. He disappeared into another room and came back with a towel and a plain gray sweatshirt. He tossed them to her without ceremony, then moved to a laptop on the kitchen counter. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up security feeds, camera angles, screens full of code Linda couldn't begin to understand. "Your sister?" Linda said, Her voice came out hoarse. That photo. Taken 4 hours ago outside her chemistry building. Kyung Won didn't look up from the screen. They've been watching her all week, probably watching you too. The room tilted. Linda gripped the towel like it was the only solid thing in the world. Why? I'm nobody. I served tables, and I heard something I shouldn't have, and you made a choice. Kyung Won finally looked at her. His face was still expressionless, but something in his eyes had shifted. You could have walked away. Most people would have. I should have walked away. Linda's voice cracked. Maya has finals next week. She's pre-med. She's got her whole life planned out, and now, the words dissolved into something that wasn't quite crying but wasn't far off. Kyung Won was quiet for a long moment, then he closed the laptop and poured 2 glasses of water from a filtered pitcher. He set one in front of Linda and kept the other. Your sister is being moved to a secure location as we speak, he said. My people will tell her there's a gas leak in her dorm. She'll think it's a precaution. She won't know you're involved. Linda looked up sharply. Your people are all ready. I made the call from the bus. He took a drink, watching her over the rim of the glass. She's leverage now. That makes her my responsibility. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Responsibility. Linda had become his responsibility too, she realized. Not by choice. Not by any logic that made sense in the world she'd woken up in this morning. But here she was, sitting in a mafia boss's apartment, while men with guns hunted them both. The stockroom, Kyung Won said. Tell me everything. So Linda told him. The wine cellar that wasn't really a wine cellar. The woman's voice, his wife's voice, switching between Italian and Russian, coordinating positions like she was directing a play. Table 1. The glass wall. The bar, the kitchen, the emergency exit, everything timed to the moment he stood to leave. Kyung Won's expression never changed, but his hand tightened around the glass until Linda thought it might shatter. She used my mother's language, he said quietly. Russian. She knew I'd taught her enough to be dangerous. I didn't understand most of it, Linda admitted. But I heard enough to know someone was going to die. Not someone. Kyung Won set down his glass with careful precision. Me specifically, and not just killed, executed, public, humiliating. He looked at Linda with something that might have been respect or might have been calculation. She couldn't tell. You saved my life. I didn't. You did. He pulled out his phone and turned it toward her again. This time the screen showed a different photo. His wife, standing outside a hotel with a man Linda didn't recognize. The man's hand rested on her lower back, possessive and familiar. The timestamp read 3 days ago. Do you know who that is? Kyung Won asked. Linda shook her head. My half-brother, Juno. His voice was ice and razors. And in case you're wondering, yes, they're sleeping together. Have been for 6 months. Linda's stomach turned. The betrayal wasn't just about power or money, it was personal, intimate, the kind of knife that twisted when you pulled it out. Kyung Won stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city like he was calculating the cost of burning it all down. You can't go home, he said. Not to your apartment, not to your sister, not to anywhere you've been in the last 5 years. They have your face now, your name, everything. So what am I supposed to do? Linda heard the panic creeping into her voice. Just hide here forever? Kyung Won turned back to face her. The city lights behind him made him look like a shadow, something not quite human. No, he said. You're going to help me destroy them. Before Linda could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his entire body went rigid. They found us, he said. The lights in the apartment went out. The backup generator kicked in 5 seconds later, flooding the apartment with harsh white light. Kyung Won was already moving, pulling a handgun from a hidden panel in the wall. He checked the magazine with practiced efficiency, then tossed Linda a phone not his, something older and bulkier. Burner, he said, your sister's number is programmed in. If anything happens to me, you call it. Tell her to run. Linda's hands closed around the phone. What's happening? Power grid doesn't just fail in this building. He moved to the window, staying to the side, scanning the street below. Someone cut it manually. They're testing our response time. How do you know they're not already? Because we'd be dead. He said it so matter-of-factly that Linda almost believed him. This is reconnaissance. They want to know what we have? How we react? They'll come later. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. Kyung Won's jaw tightened. He moved away from the window and pulled out his phone, his real one swiping through screens, until he found what he was looking for. Come here. Linda crossed the room on unsteady legs. Kyung Won turned the screen toward her. It showed a spreadsheet, columns of numbers and names and dates that meant nothing to her at first. Then she saw the highlighted entries. Large sums of money, transferred out of accounts she assumed were his, into accounts marked with initials, V, M, J, K. Viktor Morozov, Kyung Won said, pointing to the VM entries. Russian arms dealer, controls half the port traffic on the south side. His finger moved to JK. Juno Kim, my brother? Your wife was paying them both? Not paying. Investing. His voice was clinical, detached, like he was reading someone else's autopsy report. She's been funneling money to them for 8 months, small amounts at first, then larger, always careful, always just under the threshold that would trigger my auditors. Linda looked at the numbers again. Even the small amounts were more than she'd make in a year. Why would she? Because she's not just leaving me, she's replacing me. Kyung Won zoomed in on a series of transactions from last week. Morozov supplies weapons. Juno has connections in Seoul and Tokyo that I've spent 10 years building. Together, they'd have everything they need to cut me out completely. He paused. Except legitimacy. What do you mean? My family name means something in this world, my mother's legacy. He said the word like it tasted bitter. Juno's mother was a mistress. He's never been accepted by the old guard, no matter how much money he throws around. But if he marries into the right family, your wife's family, Linda finished. Kyung Won nodded. The Costas. Italian money. 3 generations deep. They've been trying to expand into Asian markets for years. Juno gives them access. They give him legitimacy. And he stopped. Closed the phone. I become irrelevant. Or dead. Whichever is more convenient. Linda watched his face. The man who'd moved through gunfire like it was choreography, who'd thrown boiling water without hesitation, who'd locked down an entire building with 3 phone calls, that man was gone. What was left looked tired. Human. The ring, Linda said quietly. You mentioned your mother's ring. Kyung Won was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black box. Inside was a ring, simple gold band, single diamond, nothing flashy. The kind of ring someone wore because it meant something, not because it cost something. My father gave this to my mother the day I was born, he said. She wore it every day until she died. I gave it to my wife when I proposed. He turned the box in his hand. She wore it once, at the engagement party, for the photos. Then she said it didn't match her other jewelry. Linda had seen engagement rings at the restaurant every night. Huge stones, custom settings, rings that cost more than cars. But she'd never seen someone hold one like Kyung Won held this, like it was made of glass and grief. She sent it back to me last week, he continued. Courier delivery, no note. I thought... He stopped, laughed once, sharp and humorless. I thought maybe she wanted a bigger stone, something more appropriate for Acosta. She was already planning to marry your brother, Linda said. Yes. He closed the box with a quiet snap. And I was too busy building an empire to notice my wife was dismantling it. Linda thought about her own life. The double shifts and student debt and careful budgets. She'd never had enough to lose something like this, an entire world, built and betrayed. But she understood the feeling underneath it. The moment you realize someone you trusted had been lying the whole time. What do we do? She asked. Kyung Won looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since they'd sat down. You keep asking we, he said, like you've already decided to stay. They have my sister's photo. Linda's voice was steady now. Anger was better than fear. They burned down my normal life. I don't have anywhere else to go. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Then we make them regret it, he said. But first, I need you to understand what you're signing up for. This isn't just dangerous, it's... His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and every muscle in his body went tense. What? Linda asked. He turned the phone toward her. The message was in Korean, but below it was a photo. His wife, standing in what looked like a private office. She was smiling, holding up her left hand to the camera. On her finger was a different ring, huge, ostentatious, glittering with diamonds. And standing next to her, his arm around her waist, was Juno. Below the photo, a single line of text in English: "See you at the wedding." If this is touching your heart, take a moment to subscribe. I poured my soul into these for you. Your support keeps me going. Linda stared at the photo until her eyes burned. The wedding invitation felt like a taunt, like they were so confident Kyung Won was finished that they could afford to be cruel about it. "When?" she asked. 3 days. Kyung Won pocketed the phone. "They're moving fast, probably worried I'll regroup if they give me time." "Will you?" He looked at her for a long moment. "That depends on whether you can learn to not get yourself killed." 20 minutes later, Linda was standing in what Kyung Won called the training room, a converted second bedroom with padded floors and a wall of weapons she tried very hard not to look at. She'd changed into clothes he'd given her, black leggings and a fitted tank top that were definitely not hers but fit well enough. Her hands were wrapped in tape. She felt ridiculous. Kyung Won had stripped down to a t-shirt and pants, the first time she'd seen him in anything besides a suit. Without the armor of expensive tailoring, she could see exactly how he'd survived the restaurant. He was built like someone who'd learned violence the hard way, lean muscle and old scars, the kind of body that remembered every fight. "Show me your stance," he said. Linda put her fists up the way she'd seen in movies. Kyung Won immediately stepped forward and adjusted her, moving her feet wider, dropping her hands lower, turning her hips. His touch was clinical, impersonal, but Linda felt every point of contact like electricity. "You're too tense," he said. "Tension makes you slow. Breathe." She tried, failed. Her whole body was vibrating with leftover adrenaline and fear, and something else she didn't want to name. Again, he moved behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Drop your weight. Most people think fighting is about strength. It's not. It's about balance, leverage, using what you have against what they expect." He demonstrated, showing her how to pivot, how to use someone's momentum against them. Linda tried to focus on the technique, but she kept getting distracted by how close he was, how his voice dropped when he was teaching, how his hands steadied her when she stumbled. "Your turn," he said. "Try to hit me." Linda hesitated. "I don't want to." "You won't." It wasn't arrogance, just fact. "Try anyway." She swung. He deflected it easily, catching her wrist and using her own motion to spin her around until her back was against his chest, his arm across her collarbone. Not choking, just controlling. She could feel his heartbeat against her spine, slow, steady, completely calm. "See?" he said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "You telegraphed it. Pulled your shoulder back first. Gave me 2 full seconds to read what you were doing." He released her and stepped back. Linda's heart was hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with the exercise. They went again. And again. Linda lost track of how many times she ended up on the mat or pinned or redirected. But slowly, something started to click. She stopped thinking so much. Started moving on instinct. Started reading his weight shifts the way he read hers. On the 7th try, she managed to slip his guard and land a palm strike to his chest. Not hard enough to hurt, but solid enough that he felt it. His eyebrows raised, the most surprised she'd seen him. "Better," he said. There might have been approval in his voice. Again. They trained for 2 hours. By the end, Linda's muscles were screaming and her wraps were soaked with sweat. But she'd held her own. Not well. Kyung Won could still take her apart in under 3 seconds, but better than she'd started, better than she'd thought possible. "Enough," he finally said. He tossed her a water bottle. "You'll be sore tomorrow." Linda caught it, gulping down half the bottle before she could speak. "Will I be ready?" "For what?" "Whatever comes next." She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "The wedding. Your brother. All of it." Kyung Won studied her, and Linda couldn't tell what he was thinking. Then he crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "Most people in your position would have let me die and gone home to their normal life. But you didn't. You made a choice." His hand came up, fingers brushing a bruise forming on her jaw from where she'd taken a hit earlier. So, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you sure you want to stay in this? Linda thought about Maya, safe in some secure location she'd never know about the restaurant, and the wine cellar, and the moment she'd decided to write 7 words on a receipt. About every exit she'd passed, and every choice she'd made that led her here, standing in a mafia boss's apartment, learning how to fight for her life. I'm sure, she said. Something shifted in his expression. Good, because I have a plan. He stepped back, pulling his phone out. But you're not going to like it. He turned the screen toward her. It showed blueprints, a large estate, guard rotations marked in red, entry points circled. At the top, a label, Costa Family Compound. You want to crash the wedding? Linda said slowly. Not crash. Kyung Won's smile was sharp and dangerous. Infiltrate. They're expecting me to hide, to regroup, to be afraid. He zoomed in on a service entrance. We're going to walk right in the front door. Well, he glanced at Linda. You are. Her stomach dropped. What? They don't know who you are, not your name, not your face. To them, you're just a witness they haven't cleaned up yet. He swiped to another image, a staff schedule. The Costas are hiring temporary servers for the reception. You're going to be one of them. You want me to serve drinks at your wife's wedding to your brother? Linda heard how insane that sounded even as she said it. I want you to get me inside, Kyung Won corrected. Once you're in, you'll have access to the service areas. You'll plant these. He held up what looked like ordinary cufflinks. In 3 locations, they're signal boosters. They'll give me access to their security system. Linda stared at the blueprints, at the guard rotations, at the hundreds of ways this could go catastrophically wrong. And then what? Then we show everyone exactly what kind of people they're celebrating. He closed the phone. Your wife wants a wedding? We'll give her one she'll never forget. His phone buzzed again. Kyung Won glanced at it and his expression darkened. What now? Linda asked. He showed her the screen, another message, another photo. This time it was a medical document, an ultrasound image. At the bottom, a caption, 10 weeks, it's a boy. Linda's blood went cold. She's pregnant. Yes. Kyung Won's voice was ice. And the timing means it's not mine. The implications crashed through Linda's mind. This wasn't just about stealing an empire. It was about erasing Kyung Won, completely replacing him with his brother, giving the Costas an heir that would tie all 3 families together. They're not just trying to kill you, Linda whispered. They're trying to replace you. Like you never existed. Kyung Won's hand tightened around the phone until the screen cracked. Then, we make sure everyone remembers exactly who I am. He looked at Linda. Application for the catering position is due by midnight. We need to get your paperwork ready. Linda took a shaky breath. 48 hours ago, she'd been worried about making rent. Now she was preparing to infiltrate a mafia wedding, carrying surveillance equipment for a man who'd become the only thing standing between her and a bullet. Okay, she said. Tell me what I need to do. Kyung Won pulled up a file on his laptop, fake references, work history, everything she'd need to pass as an experienced event server. As Linda watched the fabricated life appear on screen, she realized there was no going back now. She'd crossed a line that didn't have an exit. The training room door opened without warning. Linda spun, heart hammering, but Kyung Won didn't even flinch. A man stepped in Asian, 50s, expensive suit, carrying himself like someone who'd earned his authority through decades of survival. We have a problem, the man said. Kyung Won's expression didn't change. What kind? The kind where Morozov just moved up the timeline. The man glanced at Linda, then back to Kyung Won. The wedding's not in 3 days anymore. It's tomorrow night. The room went silent, except for the hum of the laptop. Linda watched Kyung Won's face, waiting for anger or shock. But he just stood there, processing the information like it was a weather report. How do you know? He asked. The older man pulled out his phone, swiping through images. Our contact in Costa Security. They moved the wedding up because someone leaked the timeline. Morozov thinks you're planning something. He's right. Kyung Won looked at Linda. Can you be ready by tomorrow? Tomorrow. Not 3 days. 24 hours to become someone else entirely. Yes. You need to be sure. I'm sure. The older man cleared his throat. There's something else. The medical records, the pregnancy. I had our doctor look at them. He paused. The dates don't match. Kyung Won's eyes sharpened. Explain. She's claiming 10 weeks, but the measurements suggest 16, maybe 17. He pulled up side-by-side ultrasounds with technical annotations. She backdated it. Linda understood before he finished. You were overseas 16 weeks ago. Seoul. 3 weeks. Kyung Won's jaw tightened. But Juno was in Chicago. The older man nodded. The baby's his. And there's more. Morozov's been paying for fertility treatments. Swiss clinic. The pregnancy that took was 17 weeks ago. Exactly when you were gone. Linda felt sick. A baby being used as a weapon before it was even born. They planned everything, she said. The pregnancy, the timing, the wedding. And the gender, Kyung Won added. A boy. Sons inherit. This was never about love. He looked at the older man. Does the Costa family know? About the real father? No. If they find out Juno's been playing them, they'd kill him themselves. Kyung Won pulled up blueprints again, zooming in on a new section. The Costa family keeps physical records, DNA tests, medical histories, contracts, everything that matters. The family archive, the older man said. 3rd floor, east wing, behind a vault door. Good thing we have someone who can walk right past it. Kyung Won looked at Linda. Catering staff have access everywhere. No one pays attention to servers. Linda's stomach dropped. You want me to break into their archive? I want you to photograph 3 things. DNA results proving paternity, fertility clinic records showing the real timeline, banking records connecting Morozov's payments. He met her eyes. That's our proof. Evidence they've been lying to everyone who matters. And then what? You show them at the wedding? The Costas pride themselves on tradition, honor. When they find out Juno and my wife have been using their family name to legitimize a bastard conceived through fraud, they'll handle it themselves. The older man checked his watch. 18 hours before staff reports. I'll have everything ready, uniform, credentials, background. But Linda, if they catch you... I know. She didn't need the reminder. After he left, Linda paced to the window. Somewhere out there, Maya was safe, living her normal life while Linda's had become unrecognizable. You can still walk away, Kyung Won said quietly. Linda turned. You said I couldn't go home. I can arrange protection, new identities, relocation, enough money to disappear. He moved closer. You'd never have to think about this again. It was genuine. He'd let her go. Part of her wanted to take it, grab Maya, and run somewhere safe. But she thought about the training room. Landing that strike. The way he'd looked at her after, like she was more than just a witness. They made me part of this when they photographed my sister, Linda said. I don't run from things that scare me. Kyung Won studied her, then pulled out a small black device. This goes in their computer. 90 seconds to clone everything. Linda took it. There's a panic button. Press it twice and we extract you, but if you do, we lose everything. His eyes locked on hers. So, don't press it, unless you're about to die. They worked through the night. Linda memorized floor plans, drilled her cover story, practiced moving with serving trays until dawn broke. At 4 a.m., she collapsed on the couch. Kyung Won draped a blanket over her, then returned to his laptop. Why did you give her the ring? Linda asked quietly. He was silent for a long time, then, because I thought she was different. He looked at her. I won't make that mistake again. Linda's phone buzzed. A text. Your sister is safe. She asked about you. We told her you're working a private event. Linda stared at the message until the screen went dark. Across the room, Kyung Won's phone lit up. He stood abruptly. What? Juno wants to meet. It's a trap. Obviously. But if I can get him alone... He grabbed his jacket. If you go, I go. Linda stood. You don't get to protect me by getting yourself killed. This isn't your fight. I'm the one who got you out of that restaurant. I'm going into the compound tomorrow. She grabbed her jacket. And I'm not letting you walk into an ambush alone. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Then something shifted. Fine. But you do exactly what I say. Understood. As they headed for the door, Kyung Won's hand found hers in the darkness. Not romantic, tactical. Keeping her close. Whatever happens, he said quietly, don't let go. They stepped into a Chicago morning that hadn't decided whether to rain or snow. The meeting place was an abandoned warehouse on the south side, the kind of location that screamed trap so loudly Linda could hear it from 3 blocks away. Kyung Won parked 2 streets over, engine ticking as it cooled in the pre-dawn silence. "Last chance to stay in the car," he said. Linda checked the small recorder hidden in her jacket pocket. Not happening. They approached on foot, staying in the shadows. The warehouse loomed ahead, broken windows like missing teeth, a single light burning on the second floor. Kyung Won moved like smoke, and Linda did her best to match him, remembering everything he'd taught her about staying quiet, staying low. The ground floor was empty, except for old shipping crates and rust. They took the stairs slowly, Kyung Won's gun drawn, Linda's heart hammering so hard she thought everyone in Chicago could hear it. The second floor opened into what used to be an office space. Now it was just exposed brick and broken furniture. And people. Too many people. Juno stood in the center, flanked by 4 men with guns. He looked like a younger, softer version of Kyung Won, same sharp features, but without the edge that came from surviving. Beside him, Kyung Won's wife sat in a chair, one hand resting on her barely visible pregnancy, the other holding a glass of wine she wasn't drinking. And behind them, leaning against a support beam like he owned the building, was a man Linda assumed was Viktor Morozov, older, gray-haired, wearing a coat that cost more than her car used to. "Brother," Juno said, smiling, "you actually came." "You asked." Kyung Won kept his gun pointed at the floor, but Linda could feel the tension radiating off him. "Let's skip the performance. What do you want?" "What I've always wanted." Juno gestured to the empty warehouse. "What's mine? What should have been mine from the beginning if our father hadn't been so traditional about bloodlines?" "You want to talk about bloodlines?" Kyung Won's voice was ice. "Let's talk about yours." Juno's smile faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means your fiancée is pregnant with your child. Congratulations." Kyung Won pulled out his phone, tapping the screen. "Except the Costas think it might be mine. Convenient timing on that announcement." The wife stood abruptly. "You don't know what you're—" 17 weeks! Kyung Won cut her off. "Not 10. 17 weeks ago I was in Seoul, but Juno was here. With you. In our home." He turned the phone toward Morozov. "The fertility clinic records are very detailed. Swiss medical facilities keep excellent documentation." Morozov's expression shifted from bored to interested. "Show me." Kyung Won tossed the phone. Morozov caught it, scrolling through the files, his face darkened with every swipe. "You said the child was his," Morozov said quietly, gesturing to Kyung Won. "You said that's why the Costas would accept the marriage. Legitimacy through his bloodline." "It doesn't matter whose," Juno started. "It matters to the Costas." Kyung Won's voice was sharp. "They're not investing in you, they're investing in what they think is my child, an heir with my mother's legacy. Without that, you're just another bastard with ambition." "We can still," the wife tried. "No, you can't." Linda stepped forward, pulling out her own phone. Her hands shook, but her voice held steady. "Because we have everything. Bank transfers from Morozov to the clinic, text messages between you two planning this. Even the original ultrasound with the real dates." She looked at Morozov. "They've been playing you too. Using your money to create an heir they planned to use against you once they didn't need you anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating. Morozov handed the phone back to Kyung Won, his face unreadable. Then he looked at Juno. "Is this true?" "Victor, I can explain." "Is it true?" Juno's jaw tightened. "The plan was solid. We just needed—" He didn't get to finish. Morozov nodded once. 2 of his men moved forward, grabbing Juno's arms. The wife screamed, but no one moved to help her. "The Costas will hear about this," Morozov said calmly. "All of it, and then we'll let them decide what happens to people who lie about bloodlines." He looked at Kyung Won. "Your brother made a mistake. I don't work with people who make mistakes." "Neither do I," Kyung Won said. Morozov's men dragged Juno toward the stairs. The wife tried to follow, but Morozov caught her arm. "Not you. You stay. The Costas will want to speak with you personally about their grandchild that isn't their grandchild." She collapsed back into the chair, all her elegance gone, replaced by something that looked like terror. Morozov paused at the stairs. You have 24 hours to consolidate your position. After that, we renegotiate terms. He smiled, cold and professional. Congratulations on surviving your brother's ambition. Then he was gone, taking Juno and most of the guns with him. Linda and Kyung Won stood in the sudden quiet, alone except for the wife, who sat crying into her hands. What happens now? Linda asked. Kyung Won looked at his wife, former wife, really with something that might have been pity but looked more like disgust. Now she explains to the Costa family why their investment just disappeared, and He turned to Linda. We go to that wedding. Make sure everyone understands the natural order has been restored. His phone buzzed. Park's name flashed on the screen. Kyung Won answered, listened, then smiled for the first time since Linda had met him. Perfect timing, we'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and looked at Linda. The Costas just uninvited Juno from the wedding. They're looking for a new guest of honor. His eyes gleamed. Guess who they called? Linda understood. You. Me. And my associate. He gestured to her. Hope you're ready for that infiltration mission. Because we just got a formal invitation to walk through the front door. The Costa compound looked like something out of a different century. Iron gates, manicured gardens, security disguised as landscapers. Linda wore a black dress Park had provided, simple and elegant, nothing that would draw attention. Kyung Won wore another perfect suit, his mother's ring back on his finger where it belonged. They walked through the front entrance like they owned it. The Costas greeted them in a private study before the ceremony. Don Costa himself, 70 years old and sharp as broken glass, sat behind a massive oak desk. His wife stood beside him, diamonds at her throat, expression carved from marble. Mr. Kim, the Don said, thank you for coming on such short notice. Thank you for the invitation. Kyung Won's tone was respectful but not submissive. I understand there were some complications with the original arrangements. Complications. Mrs. Costa's voice could have frozen fire. Your brother and that woman lied to us. About everything. The child, the timeline, their intentions. She looked at Linda. And you are? Linda Brooks, Linda said, keeping her voice steady. I work with Mr. Kim. She's the reason I'm alive, Kyung Won added. And the reason you know the truth about your would-be son-in-law? The Don nodded slowly. Morozov explained. Your brother made a serious mistake, lying about bloodlines. He shook his head. Unforgivable. I agree, Kyung Won said. The wedding will proceed, Mrs. Costa said, but obviously not as planned. We've invited key families, business partners. They'll want to know what happened. They'll want to see strength, not chaos. They'll see it, Kyung Won promised. 2 hours later, Linda stood in the garden watching 300 people pretend everything was normal. The chairs were filled with men in expensive suits and women in designer dresses. No one mentioned the missing groom. No one asked about the bride who was conspicuously absent. Instead, Don Costa stood at the altar and announced a new alliance. The Costa family and the Kim family, united not through marriage but through mutual respect and shared interests. Kyung Won stood beside him, accepting congratulations like he'd planned this all along. Linda watched from the edge of the crowd, still processing everything. 48 hours ago, she'd been a waitress. Now, she was standing in a garden full of criminals and power brokers, wearing a borrowed dress, having helped dismantle a conspiracy that would have gotten people killed. Miss Brooks. She turned. Mrs. Costa stood beside her, glass of champagne in hand. You did well, the older woman said quietly. Not many people would have had the courage to get involved. Fewer still would have survived it. I didn't have much choice. There's always a choice. You made the right one. Mrs. Costa studied her. Kyung Won speaks highly of you. Says you're smart, resourceful, says you saved his life twice now. Linda didn't know what to say to that. This world, Mrs. Costa gestured to the garden, the guests, the empire hidden behind champagne and small talk. It's not for everyone. It requires certain qualities. Loyalty, intelligence, the ability to see 3 moves ahead. She smiled. And the courage to act when it matters. You have all of those. I'm just trying to keep my sister safe. Of course, family first. Always. Mrs. Costa touched Linda's arm lightly. But when this is over, when your sister is secure and the dust settles, think about what you want next, not what you think you should want, what you actually want. Then she was gone, moving through the crowd like she owned every molecule of air. The reception lasted until midnight. By the time Linda and Kyung Won made it back to his apartment, her feet were screaming and her head was spinning with names and faces and political calculations she'd never had to think about before. Kyung Won poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. They stood at the window, looking out at Chicago spread below them like a circuit board. "It's done," he said finally. "Juno's finished. Morozov's backing me instead. The Costas have what they wanted, stability and a partner they can trust." He took a drink. "You can go home now. Back to your life." Linda stared at her reflection in the dark glass. What life? The restaurant job I'll never get back? The apartment I can't return to? The normal existence where I don't know how to fight or spot surveillance or read a room full of killers? "I can arrange everything. New city, new identity, school for your sister, enough money that you never have to worry." He looked at her. "You'd be free. Completely free of all of this." "Free," Linda repeated. The word felt strange. "Is that what you think I want?" "I think you deserve the choice." Kyung Won set down his glass. "Most people who fall into this world don't get one. They're trapped by circumstance or debt or fear. But you walked in by choice, and you can walk out the same way." Linda thought about Maya, safe and oblivious. About the restaurant and the wine cellar and the 7 words that had changed everything. About learning to fight, to think strategically, to trust her instincts in situations where hesitation meant death. "What's the other option?" she asked. Kyung Won was quiet for a long moment. "You stay, not as someone I'm protecting, not as a debt I owe, as a partner, equal stake, equal say, equal risk." He turned to face her fully. "I'm rebuilding everything my brother tried to destroy. I need people I can trust, people who've proven themselves when it mattered." His eyes held hers. "I need someone like you. You barely know me. I know you saved my life when you could have walked away. I know you faced down armed men and infiltrated enemy territory. I know you're still standing here when most people would have broken." He moved closer. "That's enough." Linda's heart was hammering. This was insane. She should take the money, grab Maya, disappear into some quiet life where the biggest danger was a difficult customer. But she thought about the way she'd felt in the training room, the way she'd handled herself at the warehouse, the way Mrs. Costa had looked at her like she was someone who mattered. "If I stay," Linda said slowly, "I want real partnership, not just muscle or cover. Real decisions, real authority." "Done." "And my sister never knows. She gets to live her normal life, become a doctor, never even suspect what I'm doing. Already arranged. And if I decide later that I want out, then you walk away. No questions, no consequences. I'm not building a prison." Kyung Won extended his hand. "Partners?" Linda looked at his hand, then at his face. This man, who'd been a stranger 3 days ago. Who'd killed to protect her, trusted her with his life, offered her a place in a world she'd never imagined belonging to. She thought about her reflection in the restaurant windows all those nights, invisible, forgettable, just another waitress in a city full of them. She didn't want to be invisible anymore. Linda shook his hand. "Partners." Something shifted in Kyung Won's expression, relief, maybe, or satisfaction. He pulled her closer, not romantic but significant, like sealing a deal that mattered. "Welcome to the Empire, Linda Brooks." Outside the window, Chicago glittered like a promise or a threat, impossible to tell which. Linda stood in a Mafia boss's apartment, wearing a borrowed dress, her old life burning behind her, and a new one stretching ahead into dangerous, thrilling unknown. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Hey sis, this private event must be fancy. Send pics. Miss you." Linda smiled and typed back. "Miss you too. See you soon." She silenced the phone and turned back to Kyung Won, who was already pulling up blueprints on his laptop, the next target, the next problem, the next empire to build or destroy. "So," Linda said, moving to stand beside him, "what's next?" Kyung Won looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled like he meant it. "Now? Now we get to work." Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.